about Argylle. So I'm not usually one for movie reviews, I'm usually more of a book person, but I feel like this is one of those movies that I need to talk about it to wrap my head around it. So that's what we're doing today. I'm gonna do my best to try to keep this review as spoiler-free as possible. Obviously, you can't talk about a movie without alluding to certain elements of it, but I'm going to try to avoid giving any major plot spoilers or anything. So stick around. I actually watched this movie within a few days of it going into theater, so this is somewhat timely-ish. So this movie is very fun in a very, I'll say, campy way. It has moments where, as the audience, you do feel genuinely upset, especially where the cat's concerned. It's amazing to me that they gave the cat its own story arc. It wasn't just this quirky little sidekick that it seemed like it was in the trailers. It had a whole arc of its own. And I feel like the fact that the cat is such a prominent character is really revealing about the tone of this story. So if you're looking for a serious spy movie, this is not for you. And if you're looking for just a completely stupid spy parody, this also isn't really for you. To me, as a person who doesn't really watch spy movies in general, parody or otherwise, it feels like it sits kind of in the middle. Where it doesn't feel like a spy parody 100% of the time, but it absolutely does not take itself too seriously. I did feel like we had a good sense of when to use humor and when to kind of pull back and be a little bit more serious. I felt like from a storytelling perspective, it kept up the tension really well and it was really engaging. One thing that I think you learn pretty much off the bat, right in the first, I'll say 10 minutes of the film, is that you cannot trust where it's leading you. Retrospectively, looking at the film as a whole, I feel like it's kind of predictable, but in the moment, as you're going from point A to point B, it pulls you all over the place. So to back up, the general premise of this film, if you don't already know, is that this woman, this author, has just released the 4th novel in her stupidly successful Argylle novels, which is a series of spy novels named after, very fittingly, the main character, Argylle. I feel like I should specify when I say the main character, I mean of her novels. And throughout the first few minutes of the film, we are kind of jumping back and forth between the author in the real world and the story world that she has created. Until suddenly, out of nowhere, she is basically shoved into her own story world. Chaos ensues, and she, just like the audience, is left unsure of who and what to trust and what is and is not real. We never know what is going to happen next. What I found really interesting about the story is that it's literally built out of plot twists. Where you would normally get just sort of added pieces of tension in a story, this movie completely pulls the rug out from under you and says, actually, you were not standing on a rug, you were actually standing on a trapdoor. Again. When I was talking to my spouse about this movie after the fact, I pretty much was describing it as that Oprah meme where she's just and you get a plot twist, and you get a plot twist, everybody gets a plot twist. Because that's basically what was happening. Every time you think you have solid ground under you, the movie just sort of pulls out another rug that you didn't even know was there to pull. It is fun, but it's also a little bit exhausting. If you were playing a drinking game where every time there was a plot twist, you took a drink, you would get alcohol poisoning and die. In a lot of ways, it sort of reminded me of my own writing process, where sometimes if I'm just sort of stuck in a hole, I will completely 180 the story and just keep going just so that I'm still getting words on the page, with the full intention of smoothing everything out in editing. Sometimes these plot twists come in the form of completely shifting who a character is, with or without warning, because sometimes I don't actually ever go back and edit the story, so the characters that were the good guys may suddenly be the bad guys, or they may just be the good guys but pretending to be the bad guys. You never know. It really felt like this movie just sort of took that practice that I use in my own writing just to, get that rough draft down, and they just didn't smooth some of those things over. It's a very jagged way of telling stories because generally you go back and you edit it, you make things a little bit more consistent. Yet for what this story is going for, I think it actually works really well. It is an admittedly cheap way of keeping viewers engaged by throwing the story in all of these twisting directions with these all of a sudden pulled out of thin air reveals. And upon further reflection, I do feel like this is where it really is sort of a parody of a spy movie, where just all of a sudden this major thing that you didn't see coming is revealed. But it seems like the movie is very hyper aware of what it's doing, and it keeps on just leaning deeper and deeper into this trope that it feels very forgivable, and it feels, again, very intentional. And I feel like that's what makes it forgivable. Like, it knows what it's doing, and it's doing it intentionally. It's controlled. So as I've gotten older, and as I've made more and more videos and learned more and more about video and really film production, I find myself focusing more and more on the aesthetics of the films that I watch, and trying to pay attention to like camera angles and lighting and depth of field and perspective, when the film chooses to do a wide shot, when it does a close-up, when it does a super close-up, when it does an over-the-shoulder, when it does a point of view. That was a really weird way of saying point of view, but my mouth decided to stop wording for the moment. But then also thinking about like what kind of colors are sitting within the frame, what elements are within the frame, how are things angled against each other? Are we going for a very symmetrical shot where there's an equal amount on both sides and the subject is centered? Are we going for a 3/4 shot where the person is sitting kind of on the third lines? What are we doing? What kind of mood does that create? What does that do for the tone? I find myself paying more and more attention to what do I like out of films, and what does this do for me, and what kind of shots do I want to try to recreate personally in my own video making. Unfortunately, I don't do a lot of projects that allow me to play on those right now, but eventually, hopefully, maybe we'll do some more, but that's not the point. I am going off on a tangent. Argylle. We're talking about Argylle. My point is that I loved the way that this movie looks. It definitely has this over-the-top feel where we are playing very heavily on color and angle, and it just feels like both the camera people and the editors had a lot of fun putting this movie together. I feel like the editors, especially with the like frame matching and the transitions on action, they were on the mark with it. And I also love that both through elements of the plot, but also through the editing, especially through the editing, we get a hint at what the real plot twist of this movie is. Like, the real plot twist buried among all of the baby plot twists. We get a hint of what this will be in the first few minutes of the film. And throughout the movie, it is played out repeatedly in a very sort of like, it's giving like Sixth Sense sort of constant clues throughout the movie that once you reflect back on it, or if you watch it again, you'll catch everything. I assume I've only watched the movie once, but you get the point. There was one scene that I think was a little bit too much for me, and this was the dancing scene. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, and even if you don't, think about a minute. I think you do know what I'm talking about. The one with all of the color bombs. Yeah, you know. It was fun. Don't get me wrong. Like, it was a super fun scene. I think the issue that I had with that particular scene was the length of it. I don't know exactly how long that scene was, but it felt like it was dragging a bit, to the point that there were clips that looked like they were being reused. They maybe weren't necessarily being reused, but we were definitely getting the same angle multiple times. Like, when the scene began, I was with it. It was fun, it was cheesy, it was campy. But unlike Olive Garden, where you can never get enough, there was just too much cheese here. I got constipated and died. Do I think that this scene should have been cut? Absolutely not. It's a very pivotal moment for these characters. It is huge for establishing the relationship between certain characters, and not only that, but establishing the type of relationship that these characters are in together, and where their alliances are within this world that we've already established is super all over the place and inconsistent. But it would have been so much stronger if it maxed out at 30 seconds. Especially in a movie that already has a 2-hour and 19-minute runtime. Like, we don't need to pad this movie with anything. We can just move on. And it's unfortunate because I do feel like the rest of the movie is paced really well. We are constantly on the run. There's this sort of constant on the edge of your seat feel because we are always moving. We are always doing something and establishing something. It is a beautiful example of good storytelling, assuming we look past, some of the cheap tricks that it's playing on, because those are part of what makes it a proper parody. But if we were to, say, point out just all of the story beats, it is always on the move. It's always giving new information or shifting your understanding of that information, and it's just beautiful. Except for this scene where it establishes very little and honestly just makes you feel like you might be on drugs, because it was something. So yeah, those were some of my thoughts on Argylle. Thank you, Cinnamon. Super fun film. Definitely follows some writer fantasies of getting the opportunity to live in the worlds that you create, for better or for worse. If you are interested in a spy parody with a knockoff Ryan Reynolds, because let's be honest, Sam Rockwell is giving very heavy Ryan Reynolds vibes in this movie. And a woman who admittedly did a beautiful job in this movie, but I will never forget that she stole the role of Victoria in the Twilight series. And a cat who honestly made the movie in so many ways that would not have been possible if there had only been humans in this movie. This, I think, is the movie for you. So if you have seen Argylle, let me know what you thought of this movie in the comments down below, and also, while you're down there, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, because I post 2 new videos every week, whatever I'm doing on Wednesdays, and stabbing videos on Friday. I'm a professional stabber, that's what I do. Anyways, I hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye! Okay. Oh, you're a little pain in my butt, you know what? Like, you are adorable and I love you, but you're a little pain in my butt. Nah.